Hey everybody, welcome back to The Quest for the Bestest. It's the podcast from Back About Banter where we review every single Best Picture nominee for the calendar year 2025. We're back at it. We're chugging our way through all 10 of these supposed nominees. Today, we are talking about an oft-talked-about film. That would be Emilia, Perez, directed by Jacques Audiard, a French production, credits were in French, starring Zoe Saldana, Carla Sofia Gascon, Selena Gomez. This is a film that is not taking place in France, though. It takes place in Mexico, in La Ciudad de Mexico. Is that right?
Yeah.
How do you say it right? I'm
Sí.
not very good at Spanish,
Sí,
I have to admit.
Sí, Timo.
But yes, Mexico City. I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say about this film because we, too, the most qualified film reviewers to talk about this film, will be adding to the discourse. But we'll do it in our own way and with our own flavor, as we always do. But first, I got to remind you, last time we talked about The Brutalist, Brady Corbet's new film. We thought it was a pretty expansive film to discuss. In fact, we took the longest time ever we have on a Quest show. Biggest runtime for an episode on that on that there one.
It was the biggest episode.
It was the biggest episode.
It's the longest.
We're dating ourselves right after the old inauguration here. It's gonna maybe play.
Yeah, that guy's gonna be irrelevant by the time this one comes out.
The Trump impression's gonna be relevant for a long time, Timo. We're dating ourselves to being alive in the 2020s.
The Brutalist got an 8.9, and it went at spot number 1 of the ranked list of Best Picture nominees. And now I hand it off to Abram to read a comment, if there is one, if one exists, from our YouTube suggestions box. What do the viewers say?
So I'm to pull the proverbial curtain back here. Is this episode 5 of nominees? 4?
4.
We haven't reviewed 5 movies.
This is 4?
This is 4.
The point is, folks, only Honora is posted right now, so there's not too many comments to go to. So here's what I did. We're reviewing a musical. So I went into our YouTube comments here and found another musical, Better Man. And on our review of Better Man, Don't Reply says the following. Everyone was back.
Abram, stop!
No, he's reading it. It's not a reply.
It's not a reply. What are we going to reply to? I don't know. You guys break the rules.
You'll have to litigate that here while I'm reading this comment here from Don't Reply. What you do with it is up to you. Everyone was bashing the movie, and then so many were praising it. I was curious who was right, and I don't know what the haters were watching, but this was the most risky, bold, cutthroat, psychotic, pleasantly surprising biopic / musical I've seen in a very, very long time. 2 heart emojis. Go see it.
Whoa.
Now, I really want to see Better Man. I don't know if it's playing near me, but it also made no money, so I'm sure it's going to be playing it on my smart TV in about 1 week.
I would catch it if you wanted it in theaters. I'd catch it sooner rather than later, but also it'll go to Paramount Plus or whatever.
Oh man, I just accidentally paid for like 2 months of Paramount Plus and I canceled it. I should have waited. I should have held out just a little bit more.
Foolish move.
After you watch Knuckles, right?
Yeah, after you watch all of the Knuckles show.
Well, speaking of litigation, speaking of Robbie Williams, because I think he actually has a song on the soundtrack of this film. If you were, these stupid Netflix subtitles got to tell you who every artist is that appears on the soundtrack.
Yeah, that's so dumb.
Well, whatever. Let's talk about Emilia Perez. Tanner, what is the plot of this movie? What happens?
Okay, in the film Emilia Perez, we start with Zoe Saldana's character, Rita. She is a lawyer, but she is nowhere near the top of her firm. She is sort of fed up with the fact that she has to do this underling work that is then taken credit for by the higher-ups, often the men in her firm. And all of a sudden, she is contacted by a Mexican drug lord. This Mexican drug lord wants Rita to basically go out and organize gender transition surgery. This Mexican drug lord can sort of assume this new identity of Emilia Perez,
the titular
Emilia Perez, as portrayed by Carla Sofia Gascon. So the surgeries take place. Emilia Perez becomes this new identity out in the world, and the drug lord death stages the death of the drug lord here. So. Then 4-year time skip. And then Emilia Perez, she's like, I want my family back. Selena Gomez and her 2 children. So she stages this whole like Mrs. Doubtfire-esque situation where the family comes back into the fold and they start a non-governmental organization to help the families of people who have been disappeared by Mexican drug cartels to sort of give them closure. And then, you know, it sort of snowballs into the enemies of Emilia Perez and in her drug lord days come to learn that who she really is, or who she was rather. And then there's a big shootout at the end and a car chase. Emilia Perez perishes. Spoilers. And her kids
This
now
is a
live
90-minute review of Emilia Perez. If you're tuning in, you know what happens in this movie.
I don't know. I never really know if I will go like the entire story, if I try to do like a quick and pithy Netflix thing. But anyway, that's the story.
Good job. Who wants to go first? Tucker, you lead us off talking about Emilia Perez. What'd you think?
Guys, Lord be my witness.
I
enjoyed this movie.
I fucking knew it.
Emilia Perez is a very interesting film. I was wary at the beginning because I don't think it starts off very strong, and I don't think that the musical elements necessarily help the story this film is going for. I think it feels a little bit at odds with itself. But once you get established into the narrative, which granted is like 45 minutes into the movie, once we get established with Emilia Perez and building this organization and having her life and her emotional struggles come to a head, I'm like, this is a really interesting idea for a narrative. And I found the characters to be decently interesting. And then there's also these musical numbers, which I think are hit or miss. They're definitely clever visually, but I think the film tonally is a little bit juxtaposing itself. But narratively, I found it to be pretty strong. I thought the performances were good. And by the end, I was like, you know what? Had a really interesting, good time with Emilia Perez.
Okay. Who dareth follow that up? Tanner, maybe you do?
Sure. So I think I'm the only one here who has seen this film before. This is a rewatch for me. And I feel largely the same way about it. I think that it is... I think it's a disjointed film that really comes apart in its third act. I think that it is obviously bold, audacious. It is created by Jacques Audiard, after all, so it makes sense that it is audacious. But I don't know. There's things that there's elements of it that I think really, really don't work. I think there's elements of it that are just fine, and I ultimately kind of come down on being like, I think it's trying to do too much. It's trying to be too much while not paying the proper respects or attentions to the things that it really should pay attention to and give time to. And, you know, in the economy of storytelling, dedicate a little bit more time to the interiority of Emilia Perez, or the interiority of Rita, for that matter. Yeah. I think those are really underserved elements of this story. So I don't know. I'm interested to hear what the rest of you guys felt going in as a first watch.
Mm-hmm. Abram, do you want to go, or shall I?
Yeah, I'll go. I don't like anything about this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like it in terms of its filmmaking. I certainly don't like the script, and I find it to be a largely politically regressive and ill-conceived movie. I'm excited to get in and sort of learn what you guys appreciated about it, and maybe sort of come to appreciate some of that stuff myself. But I am really not a fan of Emilia Perez.
Mm-hmm.
There you have it. Okay, I'm somewhere in between Tanner and Abram. I think it's pretty meh in a lot of areas. I think it's shot nice, to give a little compliment sandwich here. I think there's some beautiful cinematography here, but I just think our script's not very good. I don't think our characters are very good. I dislike the musical numbers. I forget that they're even there. Honestly, they don't really stick as a part of the plot or as an integral part of the film's construction. I think, like most of our things that we're going to talk about here, don't really come from the musical sequences. And so when you have something that is so fundamental to this genre, that's just ultimately an added on, tacked on thing, it's like, why am I even remembering it? So I didn't like hate it while I was watching it. I think the politics are weird. I want to attempt to discuss Mexican drug cartel politics, but I also am going to just put this out here that says, like, I don't know shit about that. And so I feel a little out of my depth in like my own knowledge discussing this film. So I will probably attempt to attack it from an area more in lines of like, formally, what's the film showing? how is it, describing its characters? Like Tanner said, I definitely missed some of the interiority of these characters because they seem to be so emotional, and yet I don't know, we don't learn so much about that. But there's a whole lot of other issues in this film that the film is bringing up that I'm like, well, I can put my thoughts in it, but like, are my thoughts even worth very much? Not really, because I don't know much about. I can make something up. I can always do that. I'm happy to do that. But is it, am I coming from an educated point of view on a couple key issues of this movie? No, but I did watch it, and I do have my thoughts regardless. So,
yeah.
Well, shall we start with the key figure of this film, Emilia Perez, the drug kingpin? You do.
Is she? Is the question.
Then
because
let us begin there.
Let us begin there. Litigated a lot already, and this is getting into some of the awards conversations surrounding it. Zoe Saldana is our main character for the beginning 40 minutes of the film.
Yeah.
She has basically equal screen time to Carla Sofia Gascon in this film, but is then, of course, being campaigned and will likely win the Supporting Actress Award at the Oscars. Outside of all of the, screen time discourse about all of this, I think that this is really where we can begin talking about where I think the characters are a little bit confused in this, and where the time dedicated to them can be a little bit of an issue, because Zoe Saldana really sinks under the radar once Emilia Perez truly comes into the narrative after her surgeries.
Well, to start off, Zoe Saldana as a character is established in this very, I would actually say, a succinct and drop us right into the beginning of the film courtroom scene in which she is on a case. She's shown to be unhappy about the case. She's shown to be very good at her job, and she's shown to that all the men at her firm take credit for the work that she actually does, the words she actually writes, the kind of oration that she inspires. And that's all very unsettling. And then she receives the phone call from the kingpin, and our narrative begins with her accepting. And so immediately we set up a little bit of conflict with Saldana's character, Rita, wanting to do something right, wanting to use her power and her smartness for good. And we're kind of confronted with that by her taking this job for the drug kingpin. I'm immediately put kind of in a weird space of conflict with what I think the character stands for and what they actually accept to do. And so I begin already getting confused there at this part of the film. Is she a good person? Does doing bad things for good ends concern her? I don't really think the film even ever gets around to answering these questions. But it's immediate. That's what's immediately raised in the first 15 or so minutes of the runtime.
I found myself sort of thinking about this movie through the lens of almost it being a soap opera in a lot of ways.
Sure.
Now, I'm not an avid soaps viewer by any stretch of the imagination, but I've seen my fair share of General Hospital with my extended family. And what's so interesting about soap operas, in my view, are the way that they're able to continually invent further audacious plot points that are what keep you watching. And I think that a fair amount of the appeal that we're going for here hinges on that ratcheting of audacious situations across the course of the runtime. And I think that it's apparent right away because before we're even in the courtroom, we're in a musical number as Rita's preparing the oration that it turns out, in fact, her boss is going to be reading in the trial. So the priorities to me of the movie are apparent right away. It's let's craft plot level intrigue and let's thread musical sequences through those, and let's just keep that tempo up for the runtime. I don't really think at any point, and certainly not when it comes to Rita's character, do we really slow down. I like your point about interiority, Tanner, because this film is really concerned with exteriority in a number of ways. And so I think right off the bat, like you, Timo, I found myself not really in step with the movie because we are learning so much about Rita at a very surface level. And then she's making very big decisions and getting kidnapped, and all these things are happening. And I'm starting to wonder, well, what's the movie concerned with? Is the movie concerned with just simply entertaining me for 2 hours with this propulsive editing and propulsive pace? Or is it concerned in us really understanding who these people are? And I think the answer is the former.
Yeah. Well, I think we can point to one very clear area where this movie fails to explore the mindset of its characters, which is in its musical numbers, which in most musicals are about expressing the interior thoughts.
It's an extremely clever plot, like filmmaking method to like let the characters just speak what they think.
Exactly. But there only are a few of those in this movie. On the whole, the musical numbers, especially the early on ones, are about what the character is going through and not necessarily how they feel about it. And I think that is a missed opportunity, and also why I agree at the beginning I was pretty off put. I was saying that for the first 45 minutes I didn't really know what the movie was going to be about. I actually had never even read the plot synopsis of this. I've basically entirely avoided conversation of it because I was like, I haven't seen it myself. I don't really want to delve into this until I actually experience the final project for myself. And I think the plot level stuff that Rita is going through, I think, is totally serviceable. I think the concept of a courtroom drama, especially a Mexican courtroom drama, something I've never seen in a film before, twisted with musical, I'm like, okay, this is at least clever. This is at least unique. But as that first bit starts going on, I'm like, I don't know why she's making these decisions. I don't know what she's having some sort of money struggles, but like not too much. And like then the kidnapping thing just becomes like a whole mess. And then she's just jet rocketed across the globe to a bunch of different places to like do this research. And you're right, it's very plot level at that first bit. And that is why I would say I find this first section of the film before Emilia Perez, for the time skip, I guess, to be like unique, but not particularly compelling, especially because I think the first part of the movie is where most of the worst musical sequences are, or the ones that are at most at odds with the tone of the film. And so I agree. I don't find almost anything about this beginning part particularly interesting. Though I will say, Zoe Saldana as a musical actress and with physicality, I think is excellent. I think that I really love the way that she like locks herself into poses as she's doing all these musical numbers. The way they use light and shadow in these musical numbers, I think, are visually interesting. But I'm not engaged by this beginning part on a plot level almost at all. And it's also crazy, frankly, how little happens in the first part of this movie. It's like, this is really 15 minutes worth of exposition stretched out into 40, 45, 50. And that's why I'm like, I'm not really sold on that first part of the movie at all.
Tucker, thank you for bringing up the performance, because I think that is something that throughout the entire film is still a positive, or maybe even a strong suit for me. Because Zoe Saldana is quite good in the film, I feel. I'm sure there are some people who would disagree with that statement, but like, I think that what she is being asked to do, she is doing quite well. I mean, she is sort of haggard and fed up with the whole situation at the beginning. The styling of her character makes that very evident, and she plays that moment, or those moments, very well. Her whole demeanor of being like overwhelmed by the culture of Mexico that she is, experiencing or interacting with every day as a criminal prosecutor. Or I guess they're the defense in this situation. I don't really know. But no, I mean, like, the physical performance, the dancing is quite good in that regard. All four of our main characters, I guess you could say, the performers there were all awarded the acting prize at Cannes. Zoe Saldana, Carlos Sofia Gascon, Selena Gomez, and Adriana Paz, they were given like a collective group acting prize. I think it's well earned. I think the ensemble is fairly solid here. I think it is the other aspects that we've been talking about, the writing, the pacing, the direction of the whole film, is where it sort of falls short. So should we talk about where Rita and Emilia Perez meet for the first time in this like truck in the middle of the desert, where the mission statement of the film is sort of made clear?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a
Mhm.
shield kidnapping espionage thing. That was it.
Almost.
Because here's the thing. Again, I just did not know what this movie was about, and so
Yeah,
as
yeah,
soon as
yeah.
that happens, I'm like, what? What are you talking about?
Okay.
It is also just strange on a writing level. To your point, Tanner, I didn't know that Zoe Saldana is up for supporting actress. I
Correct.
didn't know the politics there, and it's interesting because it is almost as though there is an inciting incident for two characters, if that makes sense here.
Mhm.
The way we sort of move from Rita to Emilia is strange. It's almost as though we're running a relay and we're passing off the main character baton.
Yeah.
But then that baton doesn't get passed back, really.
Not really.
Well,
no.
I think it kind of does, but not like so clearly where it's like, all right, we're bouncing back and forth.
Yeah, I think they more share it more than anything else in the like second act of the film.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. I think that ultimately it just, particularly considering how far Rita falls into the background, particularly in that second act, really until the last maybe 20 minutes of the movie. I think it's oddly structured.
Yeah.
And I would almost count this discussion here as another inciting incident.
Yeah.
It's an oddly written movie in many ways.
Well, the interesting part about the balance between our two lead performers is that I honestly think that the mindset of someone voting for an awards body and considering who the main character of this movie is heavily influenced by the title of the movie and also
Granted.
narratively who is put in the more complex situation. Of course, Emilia's emotional situation and narrative situation is much more fantastical than the one that Rita is put in. But what am I saying? Distanced from the politicking of awards bodies and voting and SAG and all this stuff.
Yeah.
I think that the narrative balance between the two of them, though I think Rita doesn't get a lot to work with in that first part, especially once we settle into the part that I really do like of the film. I found that their balance and the fact that we did get Rita established earlier and their dynamic I found to be really compelling. And so it doesn't really matter to me who's actually the main character of the movie, other than like, okay, I care about the Oscars and awards bodies, so like I don't want there to be like
I understand that
politicking.
Yeah.
But narratively, I find the balance to be pretty compelling, especially because the point at which we shift over to Emilia, though I think there is maybe a little bit of missed opportunity in exploring her life pre-transition. The post-transition life, I think, is really fascinating. And so I like that we hand the baton over at that point in the film.
And it makes like logical sense to me to hand it over, especially when we are shown the time skip and then we have the two characters meet up again and they have that kind of moment where it's like, is it you? And they like have that, bingo moment. My thing is that
where's everyone going?
We shortly after that are working with this kind of theme idea of changing, well, like Tanner said, this thesis statement of the film, changing the appearance doesn't change your soul. And the before she transitioned, Emilia's life had been one of, violence and of doing very horrible stuff. And so I think the film sets up this idea that, well, now that she is different and is her true self, is going to be able to be a lot nicer and help people. And it just like, I don't really see all of that play through in the character. I think the film is interested in like having us as audience members like wrestle with, is she changed? Really? Is she different in the second half of the film? But even starting right after that initial sequence, I am like continually kind of perplexed and on edge looking for if Emilia really is all that different and if she is still the same person underneath, that like that this certain way of doing things, the cartel way of solving problems, like still manifests itself. And as we see later in the film, like, yes, it does. But doesn't lead to good things. And so I'm just like, this character note of Emilia's of having completely transformed and then sort of not following through, and then combined with not having the interiority of like learning what she actually thinks about her new situation, makes me feel like her character is somewhat incomplete here for a lot of the film. I'm like wanting to know a lot more about what she thinks. I think my big issue with this second half of the film stems from not knowing enough about our characters and their own appraisal of their situations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's especially true for Emilia because we don't learn anything about her pre the time skip, basically. It's literally just like a plot level thing of, I would like this to happen. Rita, help me make it happen. And the drug cartel leader sitting in the dark room, like giving orders, and not learning anything about her interiority pre-transition, I think is a big missed opportunity because that characterization of someone who's basically just a plot level force up to that point in the film, and then coming to realize later on, it's like, well, no, I mean, she's kind of the main character of the movie, especially like emotionally, like she's got the most stuff settled on her. I think that was where, on my side, I would levy the biggest script level criticism of this, because I find the concept of, has she changed? Has how has her internal life and perception of herself and perception of others changed? I find that to be the most interesting, emotional, complex element of the film, and I do think, at least in some regard, in that second act leading to the third act of the film, I think is handled well and is interesting, but lacking that first bit where we see her as a drug dealer struggling with this mismatched identity and wanting, like, you can easily imagine the scene where she's like ordering a raid or, I don't know, some cartel activity, but we get then a chance for her to reflect and be like, this isn't actually what I want to be doing, and like learn a little bit about the fact that she's been dealing with this for a long time. That, if that had been established better in the first 40 minutes of this movie, then I don't think almost any of the issues you were just mentioning, Timo, you would really have. But it's just like, they just totally eschew that. It's like, no, that's important.
Because you are lacking the foundation, I think that nearly every moment that comes after the film rings hollow, because you don't have any of the grounding for what was before. I mean, I wrote down lines. I was really like tuned in watching this for the second time, and I was like, okay, I must have missed something in this first act. I must have missed the moment, even if it is just in a couple lines, where Emilia Perez really gives us a look into, hey, how about why she wants to gender transition? Like, what is the thought process of that decision? And I wrote down the lines that I think they give the explanation in, and they're very weak. I mean, the extent of them are really like, I've wanted it for a long time, since I was a child. I want new skin. I want a new face. I want to be her. Like, these are paper thin sort of conversations surrounding the gender transition process, and I think really just point to one of the very first lines that Perez says to Rita when Rita asks, like, hey, why do you want to do, or, do you want to change your life, or do you want to change your sex? And Emilia Perez responds with, what is the difference? And of course, therein is the sticky wicket of like this movie's idea and conception of transness as like a rebirth of a kind, or versus it being, a series of processes that you are still at your essence the same person, and the decisions that you made previous to that transition are still with you. It is not that you are leaving that person in the past, in the dust, death. You still have to reckon with those decisions, especially if you were a cartel leader. And I think this film,
I think that is like an interesting choice of this film's, that like, okay, so we need Emilia to have been a cartel leader for her remorse later on in the film. But if we are trying to make a film about a character that we like, we need to find some way to like them. And beyond being an empathetic audience member, of which I consider myself to be one, I like, why are we supposed to like this character beyond like, okay, I feel bad for people with gender dysphoria. I don't want them to suffer. That's like my like identification with the film, because otherwise this character is one that we shouldn't like, and one that we like aren't given any reasons to be very interested in and to care and to want to succeed, because I just like, she's a drug kingpin to start the film.
Well, Timo, she loves her children.
That's weak. Like, give me a break.
So, yeah, this is what I'm. Yeah,
okay.
I don't like this at all, and I want to bring in some outside information here because I am not trans,
right?
And I do not purport to speak on the trans experience as though it is a singular, unchanging thing. And there are people who do identify as trans who do find this film to be interesting, important, good representation of the trans experience. However, I want to pull in the conversation this aggregate piece that this group called GLAAD did. GLAAD stands for the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation. Our friend Steve in the Discord shared this. What this piece does is it aggregates a very great number of largely trans writers who reviewed the film, and they share a number of issues they have with it, with the overarching claim that it is not good trans representation. And that is also my appraisal of the film. I want to very quickly read an excerpt here from a review by someone named Drew Burnett Gregory from a publication called Autostraddle. And the quote is, "Whether made by us or about us, I want more trans stories that are audacious, ambitious, and new. The problem with Emilia Perez is that while it's new in some ways, it's very, very tired in others. The film hits just about every trans trope you can imagine," and then these 6 are listed out. 1, trans woman killer. 2, tragic trans woman. 3, trans woman abandons her wife and children to transition. 4, transition treated as death. 5, dead naming and misgendering at pivotal moments. And 6, trans woman described as half male and half female. I think that this is
totally
important.
Engages in all of those.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like bing, bing, bing. Oh yeah,
I feel like that person might have done the research on what tropes are in the film.
Yeah.
And that's why I have a lot of trouble with this movie, and why I have a lot of trouble, to be honest with you, really, looking at anything in it charitably. And I think it stems from this sequence where, and I'm going to be pulling in other voices. We'll have this linked in the description so people can read further. But just this notion of this almost like, completely not medically accurate understanding of gender affirming surgery.
Has what, like 50 different surgeries at once, presumably, is what we're meant to understand.
Very hard to tell.
Yeah. And
except for all the bandages just everywhere.
Yes, she is effectively a mummy laid up in the bed.
Yeah, and so I think that when we're coming at this conversation from this ill-conceived perspective, in my view, that hits on, as all of these writers here are explaining, a myriad of different tropes that stigmatize and regress opinion of the trans experience, I just really don't. I think that it brings my opinion of the merit of this movie close to zero. And again, it's not that you can't view this and find something in it that is reverent for or interested in promoting a positive view of the trans experience, but I think it's fundamentally flawed, particularly in the context of this overarching narrative. Because I was talking to my friend about this earlier today. The story of a drug cartel leader who gains this new moral conscience later in life and wants to fake their death, come back and try to be better, try to be different, is interesting.
Right.
But when you make that character trans, and when you make that that narrative of redemption also one of transition, you are conflating terms.
And Emilia Perez explains there in that scene that we've been talking about that the reason that they acted so terribly and so brutal was ostensibly because they're trans, right? And that because of the uncomfortability with their own sense of
the
being
masculinity
a guy,
specifically is what she mentions.
Yeah, like
sure.
the line is like that she said, I had to be the worst bastard in the pigsty.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I also
I think
quite
it's
a
all
very strange. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about the trans representation, but there are probably an equal number of pieces out there about how this film represents Mexico, and I believe Jacques Audiard even has issued an apology for his handling of the land of Mexico and the societies therein and the crime issues and everything like that. The disappearances that this film is directly dealing with are are certainly sensitive issues and political issues that are being dealt with in Mexico. But people feel as though he kind of boiled the entirety of Mexico down to the ideas he wants to tackle in the movie.
Yeah. Which of course goes back to this being a film that's very much about the plot level ramifications and exaggerations and things. And this movie's not subtle about that. And I think that is another area where I would certainly critique it. As I mentioned earlier, I like my movies with a little bit more character depth and explanation of their personalities. Though I will say the area in which I do feel this film is successful and why I found myself, I kept waiting to dislike it.
Sure.
And it never came. And so I was like, oh, no, wait, I just like it.
It sounds like your review of Kraven the Hunter, Tucker.
Actually, great point. Great point. Like both those movies. But is in the idea of Emilia Perez as a character, as a character that gets a chance at redemption and has a second chance at life. And of course, that comes both through the faking of her death as a drug lord and also her new identity as a trans woman. And I think I agree that it's a problem to conflate those two. But in the narrative that is told about a trans woman who was a drug dealer that is then becomes a better person, I just think that's an interesting concept for a narrative. And seeing her, because I don't really know if I felt too much of a draw of, is she still a bad person inside? Because everything that we see her do in this middle portion of the movie, or very close to all of it, she is supportive, caring for her family, wanting to seek redemption, wanting to establish a network to help the people whose families that she harmed in the past and who people like her had harmed in the past. And so I just found that redemption to be like, I'm like, yeah, that I do feel like she's redeeming herself.
Here's my thing, is that I think that the film is a little bit more complex than that, to its credit and also discredit, because I think it mishandles its own complexity. Sure. Because the plot level, and I want to tell you, but we're getting a little farther into it. I do want to talk about the two English numbers that happen back to back, obviously the one that has been clipped, the penis to vagina song. I do want to mention that. But to continue down this line, the complexity of Emilia Perez and her redemptive arc. I think that it is not so black and white as in she transitions and now she is a new person. She is redeemed. She is a saint who starts this NGO and everything like that, because her interactions with Selena Gomez and her family writ large are still manipulative and abusive. I mean, this plot idea of well, I want them back in my life, so they must come back in my life now. They have no choice in the matter. They will stay in my house. They will, my children will be my children again, even though I've been absent from their lives for 4 years. And then there's of course the scene where she pushes Selena Gomez onto the bed and chokes her. When after Selena Gomez says she's going to get remarried and everything like that. There are these moments where Emilia shows these signs of darkness still.
Yeah, of course.
And I think that they are again conflated with the bad trans politics of the film, because they are, I guess, these they're treated as Jekyll and Hyde moments of oh, her masculinity is coming back and invoking her and to do these bad things.
Gascon even does some stuff with her voice to indicate such a thing. And it is just kind of it's just an eyebrow raising moment for me. I'm you're really this is really how you are going to portray this shift in the character? You could pick a different way.
Can I do something interesting right now?
What are you gonna do?
Through all of this stuff, I'm wondering how much I should contribute to the rest of the conversation, because I feel like I maybe shouldn't have enjoyed the movie. I'm not saying that you're going to say I'm wrong, but I'm thinking about all this. I'm well, why did I enjoy? I'm honestly confused on why I thought it was an enjoyable experience.
Well,
now
here's the thing.
It's so fundamentally flawed.
It's constructed as an entertaining movie.
And it is. It has it puts on the shine of a very prestige-y sort of thing, and I think that is why.
Because I would argue that it's beautifully shot. It's beautifully shot. The cinematography is very good.
There's I mean, there's people who are enjoying this. This film is consistently being among the most nominated films at all these awards bodies. But I don't know, your own journey and feelings on other films are your own thing. Like that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, I mean, it does go back to my soap opera point, right? I mean, there's a reason that my aunt has watched General Hospital every day for
General
like
Hospital
literally
is
her
not a
entire
good
life.
show, but it's ran for 6,000 episodes.
I mean, I think what's interesting about Emilia Perez is it tries to have it in every way.
Mm-hmm.
It has invited the comparisons to Crash many times.
Yes,
and it's similar in its desire to sort of make a Family Feud style list of like cultural issues and touch on touch on the top 10. And I think in doing so, it invites a very troubling, in my opinion, regressive political outlook. I want to touch later on when we're kind of sort of coming out of the more specifics why to me that is such a black mark on the film. But nonetheless, it does present a lot of intriguing just genre work. Just this as a crime thriller, operating with the aesthetics that it does, its musical sequences. I was certainly not bored while watching Emilia Perez. And I mean, I'm a chronic look at my phone while I'm watching a movie at home type of person. And I really wasn't.
Tisk, Abram, tisk.
You know, well, I have to know it's on Twitter, you know? I have to know.
In this particular 2-hour period.
There's nothing interesting on there nowadays, Abram. You know, nothing going down.
But I do think that, and I don't mean this to sound like people are looking at the shaky keys and not noticing what's over here, because that's not how I mean it. But I do think that the film does have this glamour about it, and that glamour is captivating in a way.
It is bold, like I said in my opening statement. It is bold and audacious in these ways. So, what might help is let's talk about the section of the film. I presume this like second act is kind of what you were talking about. This moment where
from the reconnecting after the 4-year time skip. I mean, basically into like the last 10 minutes of the movie, because I do want to talk about the fact that I think this movie has like
it's a bad ending.
Literally a car crash, but like feels like a car crash, like slams on the brakes ending that I think is really, really dumb. But it's like, I mean, I'd probably say it's like an hour of the movie.
Yeah, it's a very solid
most second hour of the movie, yeah.
Because, like the first is, there's like 40 or so minutes at the beginning and then an hour.
I checked the runtime. When Emilia Perez sits up in the bed post-op, essentially, is like 44 minutes into the movie.
Sure.
I want to pose a question to you guys that I was talking with my friend with, and we couldn't really reach an answer on. How are we supposed to feel about the character Jessie, played by Selena Gomez?
Selena Gomez's character.
I do not know how to feel about this character, to be honest, because like the other ones, I am not shown why I should like this character. Especially Jessie, who is the wife of the
Jessie gets the least background information.
I mean, just to take away what the film. Well, no, let me restart. Just like, I don't think we're shown what we need to know about this character to want to watch her on screen very much. I think she exists in this film as a kind of perfunctory character point. Like, why is she around most of the time? Well, to show us this like consequence, kind of. And then to bring her back later on such that we can have more plot points and disagreements and a reveal at the end. It's like she is plot motivated, and I don't know how much exists in this world, in the film's world, as like her own separate entity. She does get to make a couple of her own choices, but I'm not a big fan of her character at all, and I feel bad for Selena Gomez because I just like this. It doesn't sit very pretty in the mouth. It doesn't taste well. So
well, I think that's very, very fair, and to the point of her just like not being particularly fleshed out. You're like, she does get to make her own choices. Yeah, sure. In the narrative, that is true. But in the experience of watching this movie, I felt that those choices were then, I mean, obviously they were, but very much written to then see how Emilia Perez would react to them. So it's like I never felt like her own choices were like narratively complex in her own mind. It was I was just waiting to see how this would then impact the main character.
Sure,
and so,
sure.
And so she never really actually felt like her own active agent in the film. It was just like an extension for then more consequences to happen for Emilia Perez to react to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. Many people have made mincemeat of Selena Gomez's, specifically her accent in the film, and then of course there are defenders or maybe people who look at the text of the film that are like,
I don't know.
That are like,
that's all.
That are like her character's like probably supposed to be from the United States. You know, she says in one of those opening scenes in the desert, she's like, "Are we going back to the United States?"
And her sister lives there, and things
exactly.
like that.
Yeah.
So is she literally meant to be like a character who learned Spanish, as a second language after living in America for a long time?
Yeah. It's hard to know because also at one of the closing moments of the film, Emilia, we do get a little bit of backstory for both Jesse and Emilia and their relationship when they were married. Yeah. They met when she was 17. Unclear how much older Emilia is supposed to be than Jesse.
Oh yeah, but it's probably
I'm sure a significant amount. But so she was 17 when they met, and they were able to have a full relationship basically from that point. Then she couldn't have lived in America for too long when she was a child. I don't know. That part is like, I'm like, I can't really mince the timeline of this.
That is really just people being like, Selena Gomez is bad in the movie and her accent is bad in the movie.
Let's try to explore the lore of these characters to figure out if that makes sense. Yeah,
exactly.
My issue is
there's a lore reason why she's bad, guys. Not that I think she's bad in this movie. To be clear, I had no issue with the accent.
Yeah, fair.
I personally feel indifferent towards basically all the performances in the movie.
Yeah, I'm indifferent. There's similar to The Brutalist. There's some AI nonsense with the voices in this one. I'm also just like, whatever. I don't know. Not to be like that about AI, but I'm gonna just be like,
sure.
I think that there's a very uncomfortable element to this character of Jesse in one of, I think, the most misguided scenes in the film, which is Emilia Perez asking Jesse about Jesse's relationship to
Manitas.
Yes.
Oh, sure.
And this presents this notion again of trans identity as like a disguise, which I think is quite pernicious. But moreover, what it does to Selena Gomez's character to say on this point is that it makes her seem really bad.
Yeah.
And this is what's strange about it, because we know that Jesse is somebody who has been in many ways abused and manipulated. And then under the guise of this very politically icky moment, in my opinion, she admits to an affair. And in this second part of the movie here, where we're supposed to be on side of Emilia, how are we supposed to feel? How are we supposed to view Jesse as anybody other than an opponent between Emilia and her children? I think that that's very uncomfortable. I think that the choice to have so few moments for Jesse, your point, Timo, plot motivated, but even more so moments about setting up this like explicit and hot and dirty relationship with this Gustavo guy.
The worst line in the movie is when she's like, "My pussy aches when I think of you." I'm like,
yeah.
Why'd you include that?
She says hurts. The word she uses hurts.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the fuck are we talking about? I think that every crumb we get about the character just makes them seem worse. But at the same time, I'm a viewer of a movie, right? And I can remember what I saw half an hour ago.
Whoa.
And so when I put all the
no need to brag.
As long as this guy wasn't on his freaking phone,
He wasn't.
Slide whistle.
Yeah.
I know when I see her get abused,
Yeah.
And so I think that the film, the portrayal of Emilia, I just think becomes this real sinkhole in the narrative, and it pulls all these characters in, and I find myself not sure how to read the relationships between them, but I don't view that as a complexity I'm supposed to wonder on. I view it more as a flaw in the construction of the characters and in the scenes depicted.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would tend to agree.
Yeah.
Is that the film never really offers a clear reading for Emilia's character. You're right. I mean, the film ends with a parade in her honor as like a saint.
Yeah.
A saint of truth and happiness, as the lyrics go. But then you get these personal moments that are quite a bit more insidious. I mean, you talked about
I mean, when we think about the final acts of the plot of the film, this kind of raid, this action scene that takes place at the end, in which Rita is instructed, go get the guys, go out there after Emilia is kidnapped, to go and rescue her. This part where so we've sidelined Rita for a large part of this film here. We have not really brought her in as an active character, and now she's back. She's here to do this kind of lawyer shit that she's good at, which now does not mean writing court documents, but is actually like going and hiring goons to go rescue. Where it's like now, so now we've regressed, right? We've gone back to the values and the ways of doing things that we supposedly left behind, that supposedly we killed, even if we're gonna accept the faking of the death, like to go and solve these problems here by bringing out the guns, and we have this like. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of it because I just think it's real cliche-y where they're putting the guns together and it's all rhythmic and the sound
is to like the beat of the song. Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest, I like
it's
that.
Kind of cool. It's because I like the complexity of it, in that it must have been hard to do, but I also am like, this exists for no other reason other than it's cool. And we are valorizing this idea that we previously said was bad in the movie.
I think Baby Driver is a 5-star movie, so I can't really comment on this point.
It's okay to do sync things, but this example is cliche and contradictory to what this
top 5
film
movies
is
where that
getting
happens, Tim.
Yeah, top 5 movies where they sync up the things happening on screen to noise. Abram, please.
Many movies.
There's 2 directions here I think we can go.
Okay.
And Tucker, I'm going to let you choose. And you can
hey, look at this.
Choose your own
Finally,
adventure.
You're letting me have my own choices in this fucking review, you know?
you can pick me. You
like
can
Jesse.
pick one. You can choose. You can refuse. You can do whatever you want. I have. There's 2 criticisms I have against the movie. Well, I've got many criticisms against the movie, as I think is clear. Here's one. Mr. Beast. Here's one.
That dates us. That we shouldn't do.
I think that the plot is very contrived, and I think that the contrivances remove me from the narrative. Particularly, I'm very unclear about Emilia's sustained connection to the cartel trade.
That's never really explored.
And the other thing is, I think that the musical numbers are often not set up in a way that feels natural. And sometimes I find myself in these moments that I can't actually understand whether they are musical or not. This is an example.
I dislike that a lot.
I think of when Emilia and pre-transition is explaining to Rita the situation and starts doing this like really fast talk, like almost spoken word singing.
I tried
and repeating a lot of lines too.
I tried to make a little hash mark every single musical number because I wanted to know how many there were, and there were a couple where I was like, should I put a mark down for this?
Yeah,
there's a couple of them in the movie.
The only way that I would have known it was singing is that the subtitles have little musical notes surrounding them. It's like that's the only way I know we're in a musical sequence.
It's up to Tucker to choose to support or refute one of these 2 threads here.
No, I mean, I don't need to refute them because I think you're right on both of those. Like her connection to the cartel, I think is compelling, and it's something I would like to learn more about because that then sets up a number of interesting ramifications for her personality and the way that she's establishing this. NGO is the acronym, right?
Non-governmental organization.
Organization. Okay, yeah. And you're right. They don't explore that. Now, I don't necessarily think that harms my enjoyment, especially in the moment of that middle section in where that would be relevant, but I'm not really realizing that it would be relevant while I'm watching it. So it didn't harm it as I was experiencing it. But I think the more interesting point is to talk a little bit more about the musical numbers, because I think we just all agree, like, yeah, they don't touch on that. So, you know, that's an issue. But to talk about the musical numbers, I think part of the reason why they only work for me part of the time is because they do steer into this sing-talky, rhythmic element that makes it difficult to tell what tone the movie is going for. A lot of sequences. And it's those moments especially where you can't tell if the musical number has started, if they're just being rhythmic for the sake of being rhythmic, when the film, I think, feels at most at odds with itself. Usually when we're in like a full-ass musical number, like, okay, we're in the musical number.
Yeah.
Like, I can gear my mind towards this. But when there's those half moments, I'm not really sold on it. And I'm like, this is actually just taking away from the drama because obviously this is not actually happening in the internal world of the film, but I'm experiencing it, and the characters are like reacting to it. Like, so it is a musical number, but things haven't gone off the rails yet. And so then, yeah, it feels tonally juxtaposed. And that's one thing I dislike in musicals just in general, is when the lines are blurred enough for me to like, it's like an uncanny valley thing, uncanny musical sequence.
Sure.
I'm like, it's close.
So here's my
it's
thing.
close, but it's not quite there.
As a musical enjoyer, I often like, I will hear people argue both sides of it. I honestly like, I don't really have issues when like there's not a clearly delineated moment where things shift into fantasy or not. Like, movies like Chicago have these like stage performances, where like, okay, this is a stage performance of the musical number. This is not happening in reality. And then there are other films where it like blends in with the action of the movie. I'm kind of fine with any way a movie wants to display, just because I like watching a musical number in a movie. It is the specific music of the film of the numbers in Emilia Perez that I think do not work as well. I think the numbers are fine. I think there are
some that are good. There's some that are stupid.
Yeah.
You know, it runs the gamut.
The ones that don't work for me are the English language numbers.
I would go as far as to say that the English language numbers are bad, verging on horrible.
Yes.
I would agree.
The lyric writing of the two. So the two
Which is
are, of course,
vaginoplasty and lady, right?
Yes. Well, yeah. The scene in Bangkok when we're learning about all the surgeries, and then the conversation with the Israeli doctor.
Yeah.
His song specifically is like way bad.
He is terrible.
Yeah.
And that song is actually interesting because I don't think that the musicality of it, like the harmony or whatever, is particularly bad.
And it's a duet. This is a classic form of the musical.
Yeah. And I think that Zoe Saldana has a phenomenal singing voice. And when she starts singing, I'm like, okay, maybe I actually don't dislike this. But whatever, they chose this guy who just does not have a singing voice very clearly. And whenever he starts singing, I'm like, nope. I don't want to listen to this. Take off the headset. That is a really rocky sequence.
I think it's mixed weird. Yeah. There's a part where they're singing over each other, but I feel like they're like half a beat away, and it's just very hard to listen to. I take grievance with the content of both songs.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Again, this is you should go read the article we're sharing for more context, but the notion of these two cis characters are arguing the merits.
Yes, and the doctor is consistently misgendering and dead naming.
That was a really weird moment. I'm like, aren't you a doctor for this stuff? What the hell?
Don't you deal with this on a daily basis?
Yeah.
Aren't you supposed to be compassionate, do no harm? Doctors
got
code
terrible
everything?
bedside manner.
Yeah. Send him off to the MASH unit.
Uh-huh.
But then
reference.
Oh, yes. Sorry.
The other one, I didn't actually hear the penis to vagina clip before I watched the movie.
Okay. Count yourself lucky, because that is like the only clip of this movie I ever saw on any social media platform ever.
To be honest with you, I saw the thumbnail. I never wanted to click on it because I knew it was from Emilia Perez.
That's fair.
So it was new to me. And when I had to pause the movie. I'd take the earbuds out, I'd bring the laptop to Jean and said, I need you to see this. I need you to make sure that there's
Make sure I'm not imagining
I too
this,
was watching it out. I was watching it out in public in the living room, and both my roommates stopped to watch that scene alongside me.
Yeah.
I think it's so, first of all, we mentioned this earlier, it is just so far removed from the real process of getting any kind of gender affirming care. A.
Yeah.
B, it's just like I can't get over the lyrics. I just can't.
They are so stupid. They're so stupid.
Because also they're repetitive, which I know, like, okay, that happens in songs, but it's not even like it's not a refrain is the right word, I think, where like a set of lyrics come back. It doesn't feel like a refrain. It feels like they don't have anything else to write for this song.
They're listing surgeries, most of which I will say end in the same the same phrase, so you can rhyme them fairly easily. But they just keep saying like the same 4 surgeries over and over again in the song.
It's really weird.
Now here's where I come at. Is because I've seen this clip so much, and because there's tweets and there's quote tweets and there's quote tweets of the quote tweets all about it, and there's TikTok clips and there's people green screen themselves on TikTok clips. I was like, boy, isn't this freaking movie so freaking weird? There was a moment where I was like, not defensive of the clip, but to the point where I was like, you people, you're just disliking it because it is weird. Like that, you're disliking it for unimaginative, for being, because you're unimaginative in a certain way.
Can I get into another, a more serious note here about the unfortunate positioning of this movie in this climate? Is that, we are talking about watching this scene being clipped on Twitter. I could be guaranteed in the idea that some of the posters are sharing this clip in mockery, and they are engaging with it in bad faith, and that this film, which, as Abram has shown to us, does not engage in very accurate or heartfelt trans representation, is at a time period in which being a trans person in America, where this movie it matters here more than I think a lot of other places, it puts a very evil spot for trans people to have a very public-facing piece of media that is getting dogpiled, that is getting hated upon, and we're not being very kind to it either. But if your goal is trans visibility, you can't accept the idea that all press is good press, because it's not. And in this situation, I think.
But Timo, there's a day for that every year.
Oh, so
this is actually. Yeah, I agree with you completely, Timo. And this is the heart of what I said I would get to later, but this is the good time to talk about it. We're recording this. Timo's already exposed.
This is a couple days after inauguration.
Abram made the Mr. Beast reference, so we are of course recording this in the year 2018.
Obviously, Trump has been inaugurated. He's signed an amount of executive orders, I think, mainly meant to confuse the average American.
Yep.
And among them are things like the United States government only acknowledging male and female identity.
Gender identities,
And we're in this time of continually regressing, and people like Matt Walsh and these other really horrendous transphobes having massive platforms that feel vindicated. And so I think when you have a movie like Emilia Perez, and we have such uncritical, lacking nuance moments here, I think that it's so damaging. And I think that the damage that it does and can cause is the cloud over the whole production.
Yeah.
And I have a hard time looking past that, particularly because, I think at the moment at the end of the movie where, we'll talk about the ending in more detail. We can do that now if we want, I guess.
Sure,
but when Jessie has realized that in her view, her husband is in the trunk of the car. He is in the trunk. This is the scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jessie is dead naming. We're using male pronouns and all this stuff. And again, I think that there's maybe a case for that, or even the doctor. These are characters who are like prejudiced and need to learn or something. You can write characters.
For Jessie, that's probably true.
Yeah, you can write a transphobic character and you can reckon with that. Again, I'm Gen Z, but I'm not problematic age gap Gen Z, if that makes sense.
Sure, yeah. You're not the friend that's too woke.
No, I'm just woken up.
plenty of those.
I'm just woken up.
The Goldilocks.
I'm the Big Lebowski.
Yeah.
Am I the only one that still loves PC culture and wokeness
yes, thank you.
But I just think that when you have these clips that fly beyond the movie and this is being circulated all over Netflix, I think it's culturally damaging. I think this is the worst moment it could have released.
So this is an argument that is, you know, about the movie as a award season / political object. You know, the defenders of this movie, especially in Hollywood, in the industry, being like, I can't believe that so many people are so ready to tear down this film that is so important for representation. The comeback from people online, especially, you know, politically engaged people, trans people, etc., is this like, we are past the era where we have to accept that all representation is good representation. Like we have evolved past that point, even as politically we're trying to wind back the clock in many regards. And I think that these are all cogent points. Like when people post these clips in mockery, because indeed they are silly moments. They are poorly executed. They hit the ear wrong. Like they hit
the ear so wrong. That's just a great way to put it.
There's a video I saw of a woman who like actually writes musical theater. That's like, I watched this scene and I was perplexed by why they wrote the song this way. There's a much better aesthetically pleasing way to write this as a musical number without changing any of the words.
It just feels like it's like a non-English. It's like English from a non-native speaker has written it.
Well, it's a French production, et cetera.
Yeah, but it really shows, and so it's very off-putting to us native English speakers. And we've heard so many musicals that we kind of have this very clear idea of what it's supposed to sound like.
But the idea that this film, as it nears closer and closer to the potential of winning Best Picture this year, feels like, and people have theorized that it is like, what are the two things this movie is about? Trans people and Mexico. Gee, I wonder if that has anything to do, if we're trying to make a statement in any way to the systems of power currently. I will say that when there even is a film in the awards race this year that is being rightly ignored, that is more about, or that is, you know, a little bit more of a direct indictment of the systems of power, but I digress.
I mean, it is about those things, but also it characterizes the main Mexican character as a duplicitous trans person. And so that's what I think that the danger is in not looking more closely at the text. But to think about the craftsmanship as well.
Yeah.
You know, we're talking about just this feeling of numbers being subpar or just being inadequate in ways that in a different movie they simply wouldn't be. I think this notion of masquerading as a more prestigious film than it maybe is salient. Yeah, there's a lot of like flash in the movie, like the 3-pane conversation at the end of the film, or some of the more audacious musical numbers. Some of them which work, a lot of them which don't, and I see a lot of technique that doesn't feel pointed. And I think that the directorial hand here is not particularly strong. I think the choreography is hit or miss. Mm-hmm. I think that it wants to be a more on a craft level, unimpeachable work than it is.
I feel like if this film were if you took the script of this film, or at least the treatment, like a real meaty, like 80-page treatment for this film, and you gave it to a Mexican trans woman to direct, they would have made just a much better film, a much more sensitive, a much more understanding, a much more empathetic film than what we have here, and probably would have had better dance and music too.
Well, it's interesting because I think the script is really the issue of this movie. I think the character writing elements, the pacing elements, the way it ends, the way that the characters are balanced, that's all screenplay level stuff. To be honest, I think that the direction of this film is maybe what is rising to the, we have to admit, heights that it has achieved, of getting all sorts of awards and all sorts of nominations in many, many categories. I think that the craft level of this film on the cinematography level, the editing level. I don't really have issues with any of that. I think that it's more when I start to analyze the story of the film, these characters, the ways in which things are plotted out on a plot level. That's where I think the movie falls apart. And I will admit, I think that a lot of these musical sequences, even the vaginoplasty one that I think is incredibly cringeworthy and easily my least favorite part of the film, like, it's an interestingly directed musical sequence. So, yeah. We get this shot from above of all of these beds going around, and there's people like moving, and like it is that was hard to do, and like especially on a visual level, I think that the choreography and the cinematography in that sequence I think are fine. I'm just so focused on focused on the lyrics that I am like sucked out of it. Mm-hmm. But I don't share that same criticism of the craft level of this film. Sure. I really do think almost all of its issues sit within that screenplay. Though I still want to get back to where the area of we actually never ended up talking about the area of the film that I like. I do want to
just drop in, like, when we're talking about like the direction of the film, the craftsmanship, I think is something that we're all like, it's fine to actually good in parts. Like, am I wrong there?
No,
like,
you're right.
The director as the creative overseer of the story is kind of what we say.
Director as manager as opposed to director as artist, almost.
It also should be pointed that Jacques Audiard is the writer and director of this film.
Oh, sure. Well, maybe he should only do one of this. Maybe he should.
Well, he's one of the writers on the film, I should say. I think there's 4 writers. Mm-hmm. Tucker, talk about the part of the movie that you said we skipped over.
Well, because one of you mentioned, I think it was you earlier. It's like, well, there's this hour of the film that is, in my mind, the main core of Emilia Perez, which is Emilia establishing this new life, having her family come home, and dealing with the very complicated emotional situation that it puts her in. How does she portray herself to her children who don't know that she's their parent? How does she portray herself to Jesse? How does that then impact her relationship with Rita? Because Rita's the only person that, as far as I know, the only person that knows Emilia's history pre-transition. And that hour's worth of the film, I think, is a very compelling narrative that I think brings in some interesting themes of redemption and is someone a totally bad person, even if they have done bad things. I think that is where Carlos Sofia Gascon's performance is at its best. Not that that's a particularly like a surprise necessarily, but I found that section of the film, which is also largely devoid of musical sequences, to be a compelling narrative. I was like, oh, how is she going to handle this? This is like complicated for her in handling these situations. There is, of course, this underlying element that Tanner, I think you rightfully brought up earlier, of she's still manipulating them. And there's obviously these moments where her anger does still lash out and she quote unquote regresses to the previous person that she was before. But I found that all to be really compelling. I'm like, this is an interesting person and an interesting situation. They're very complex. They have this history that, of course, at face value should make me think that they're a bad person and they have done these bad things. But then I do really, and where I was trying to get at earlier with the majority of the actions she performs in this section of the film that I like, I do think show genuine remorse and genuinely trying to become a better person and change society for the better. And that interplay between someone who is, from what I saw in this film, in the writing, genuinely trying to make something better of themselves, atone for the actions that they had and the negative impact that they'd had before. I'm like, that's a good story. This is a character that I care about because they are complex, because they have this darker side to them, this darker past, but are clearly trying to make amends, reconnect with their children. I think one of the best moments in the film is the moment in which one of her sons is in the bed and talking about how he remembered his past with his father.
Yeah.
And listing out these elements that are the positives of what we did see Emilia pre-transition being a good father, like taking care of her children, like having fun with them. And so I found this to be very emotionally rich. And I do think that when you analyze it from like the external point of view of this film as a representative of a trans story, of which, especially on this level of recognition, we don't get very many, I do think there are certainly angles that I'll agree with you. I think it falls apart. But for me, as someone who, this doesn't make me an expert, but I took a number of classes about queer cinema in college. I helped organize a research study of the history of trans directors in cinema, I've experienced enough of these stories to where when I watch Emilia Perez, it's not the one film trans story I have seen. And so I don't necessarily, especially as I'm watching it, view it as a film that is that is representative of trans experience, of trans stories. I see it as, this is this character. This is not the story that I necessarily would have told or would prefer of a trans character, but this is a character with a morally complex past, with a emotionally complex present, and I am compelled by that. I'm compelled by the ways that she navigates this life that is something that I have never and will never experience, and that seeing of someone else's life that could be, I find myself drawn to that. And so this section of the film, you can cut off that 40 minutes that doesn't really establish Rita particularly well. Hell, you can tack on an extra 40 minutes at the end that more properly unpacks the stuff that we see in this middle section of the movie. But I think that middle section of the movie is a genuinely compelling drama, essentially. Of course, there are still some musical sequences, but there are certainly far less. But I found that to have great performances, to bring up some interesting themes about redemption, about trans identity, that I was able to view as the story of this character, who is emotionally complex, has this complex history that I was able to connect to. And it carried me over a 40 minutes at the beginning that I didn't really like, some things on the edges that I think are poorly handled, but in the middle of it, I think is a surprisingly strong heart. And of course, the poster of this movie is a heart with the guns in it. And like, I do see the heart in Emilia Perez that made it a film that I was able to enjoy, that I feel like a lot of people are getting distracted by conversation and by the flash and the things external to this film. But I do think that there's a very solid, well-written core to this film about a character I found very compelling.
Sure. Tucker, I would agree that the second act of this film is where it is the strongest, but unfortunately this film is not a 40-minute short film. It is a 100
It's 2 hours.
It's 130-minute feature film, of which the second act is...
It's 2 hours and 15 minutes, and 15 minutes is credits.
There's 15 minutes of credits on this bad boy?
Yes, it's a Netflix movie. They have like all the like...
Oh, that's a good point.
You've watched a streaming movie where they have like all the different sets of credits. Yeah.
Regardless, the second act of the film, it does not exist in a bubble so much for me.
I'm fully aware of that. I think I established that in my...
Well, yeah, I'm talking about like for myself. Like it's coming from the beginning of the film. This is the second act is where we are really trying to set up themes that again peter off and are not paid off in any in a compelling way. But like you are right that like this is where the meat of the film is, and so you know.
Can I note that? Well,
yes.
unless you've thought of what you're gonna.
You can continue. It's all right.
That for me, the kind of thing that I'm uncomfortable with, that I don't love about the second act of the film, is this cartel political narrative. That the notion that this film puts forward is that the disappearances as a result of cartel violence in Mexico are a problem, and that the way to solve it is to create a NGO and to pool together resources and knowledge and information to go out and provide closure, or to even find the people that have been disappeared. And now, I said it earlier at the beginning of the review, I'll say it again. I do not know anywhere near enough to be considered a qualified commentator on this at all. But it seems to me to be a little bit of a reductive solution to what is undoubtedly an extremely complicated socio-political problem in Mexico that deals with Central America, and then it deals with America, and it deals with government and the cartels themselves, and even overseas nations. It's so complicated, and the film gives lip service to the idea that this NGO can't do everything, but then in reality, in the plot and in what we're shown of the film, it is the thing that provides help and is the savior to a lot of these characters. And to me, that's unrealistic. It sets a bad precedent for how societies should...
The Perez is unrealistic? What?
...should go about like solving a very thorny problem. The idea that you can try is good, and that this... to go and to take direct action to solve the harms that you caused is also good, but its specific situating in this political context lends itself to, I don't think, be very accurate or very prescriptive at all for what to do about this very large problem in Mexico that we, as Americans, are culpable for. Like, honestly, that's kind of what it comes down to.
Sure.
I think also just sort of on a just a more literal scripting level, I don't ever really feel the work. I don't really feel that setting up this NGO was a significant moment.
Or that it was very difficult.
Yeah, well, it's sort of materializes, and we have some real, I think, heartfelt moments, and we have some sort of interesting looks into the bribery and the way that they become sort of like this NGO prison complex to get information. But I feel like it's I don't really understand how this place works. I don't really understand what Rita's here to do. I don't really see, I don't feel in Emilia what this work is accomplishing for her on an internal level.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
I think that again, it feels like a good concept, but I feel like the concept needed, from Timo's perspective, which I totally agree with, more nuanced political opinion, and
like
and
a more
I also think it's
one, kind of.
Yeah, and I think on a writing level, I want more out of it.
I agree. So this is what I was kind of getting to.
Not good enough.
That we have talked about the political
updating the review, guys.
the political positions of the film, but like at its script, at the story, at the drama, like what are the results of any of the things that we're doing here? What are the effects on our characters of anything that we're doing here? The NGO plotline is like the core story of the second act. The regret that Emilia feels for her past actions, the establishment of the NGO, having a new job for Rita as she like wants to get out. She's very eager to leave, but then like she has this job and she's like, well, I guess I'll stay here. The question of what does Rita want, what is her sort of motivation as a character is something that you can kind of jump in at any point in the narrative, and it can kind of be something different. That she wants a compelling career, and then she wants to be rich, and then she wants
to be married. She wants children.
She wants children, and then
that goes away pretty quickly.
She's like all in on the NGO thing, and at the end of the movie, she like gains
she gains children.
She gets not possess. What's the word I'm looking for
here?
Custody. Thank you.
She gains possessions. The children, she owns them.
Legal possession, custody of Emilia Perez's children. That's right. So like that's why I think I
possess this Firewalk Studios water.
Precisely. But like this NGO thing, is it recompense for Emilia? There's the song El Mal that happens. Which is the one that will presumably win Best Original Song at the Oscars this year. It is the one at the gala where Zoe Saldana really gets her moments where she's dancing around. The spotlight is following her. She's pointing at different people, being like, "This is what this person did wrong. This
what
is
that song saying?" That's like,
Timo, my point exactly. So I
agree with that. Yeah,
because and this is a moment where you're like, okay, the song does not exist itself, in a vacuum. Like it is meant to be like what both characters are getting out of this. Emilia Perez gets some sort of recompense, and for Rita, she's saying like these people are gonna pay. What do you mean? What do you mean they're gonna pay? Are you gonna like expose their secrets? That doesn't happen.
No,
they're gonna like she's going to literally pay.
I think they are literally going to fork over cash. Yeah. That's what I read it.
Well, it's a gala.
That's what you do. That's why you throw a gala.
It's the whole song has this like very verbose,
stick it to the man,
like stick it to the man, rebellious nature. And so I was like, that's not very that these rich people are like making tax deductible donations to your NGO.
Like rich, this is besides making money, this is a rich person's favorite thing to do.
Yeah. And then you have the relationship between Emilia Perez and Epifania. Epifania, I believe, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they meet because Epifania's husband was a cartel member who was missing. They track his body down and say to Epifania, hey, your husband is dead. And she's like, okay, good, chill, he sucked. And then they're like,
which
hey,
very predictable. I don't know
like...
how I very predictable plot point right there. I saw that one coming.
But like, and then Emilia Perez is like, hey,
I thought she was gonna kill Emilia, to be honest.
Can I talk to you later? And then we hard cut to them like having
slept together.
having slept together, and then Emilia Perez is like, I'm in love with you, and then they don't have a scene together again.
Yeah, that's a really weird part.
So like all these things that are here in the middle of the movie are ideas that feel very like stranded in the second act of the movie that never come to pass at the end.
Well, that is a problem. Obviously, it's a problem with the whole movie, but it's mainly a problem with how quick and dumb this ending is. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about basically every plot point that has been established up to this point in the film, and we are in the darkest desert known to man.
Oh,
and there's
God.
people belly crawling on
Netflix darkness. Come on, Netflix. Please, Netflix.
My girlfriend and I were watching this in bed, and I, having seen it before, when like the fingers arrive in the box and then they're loading up the guns, I'm like, okay, I'm turning out the lamp on the side table here because otherwise we're not going to be able to see the rest of the movie.
I was watching it on the projector, and it was like I would just kind of like I would just be looking at the the textured pattern of my wall for a moment, and then the frame would change, and I would be back to watching the movie. Come on, please, Netflix! I'm begging you, stop making this a requirement for movies on your platform. Why is there's too many of them, and it's too dark.
It's a Disney Plus problem too. There's clearly an opinion in Hollywood that people have their TVs tuned to a certain brightness that nobody has.
Like clearly nobody does. Or like, well, there's like one shot to name where Rita is in a pickup truck, and it's just not lit. Like there's no sources of light in this shot. Like there's some
It's nighttime, Timo. That wouldn't be realistic.
We are watching a film.
So I have to be honest, I really had a good laugh when the car goes into the ravine and then we hold for a second and the car catches on fire.
Yeah.
Because I don't get it, to be honest with you.
Sure.
I do. They have set up too many threads to untangle, so they literally blow up all the relevant characters.
So they just have to,
because that's easier than dealing with the rest of it. That is honestly what it feels like.
We can add a seventh trope. The kill your gaze trope is a very tried and true Hollywood method.
Yeah. But as Rita was pulling up with a bunch of hired guns to this dark ass outpost in the middle of the desert, I was thinking to myself, and looking at we had 4 minutes left in the movie, I'm like, wait,
what the hell?
We're just getting started. Like honestly, the interesting part is the reveal that Emilia Perez, especially to Jesse, that they had that this is who Emilia actually is. That in any other film about someone hiding their identity would be the start of the third act.
Right.
That is where you get your conflict, and then you have resolve later on as the characters come to adapt to the new situation. And maybe this is why I found that second act so engaging. I was like, when's this going to happen?
Yeah.
Because that is what adds fascinating tension to it.
Question,
and to the film's credit, that did, not revealing that question till the very end, did make that middle part a lot more engaging. But as the film is 4 minutes left, we're in the dark, and I'm like, they're not going to explore this. That's the answer. There's not time to explore the money that is being held back, and the whole element of the kidnapping isn't really given time to unpack, or the dynamic between Jesse and the guy who's going to be her husband, the other drug dealer guy, Gustavo, and their relationship that. Clearly, nothing in their relationship has anything to do with Emilia, because neither of them know at that point that
was it like an enemy. Well, he could have been an enemy of like the cartel that Emilia Perez was once in control of.
I think that actually the ending is the worst part of the film, because I can retroactively look back at this beginning part with Rita and be like, okay, there's some interesting sequences in there. I think Zoe Saldana is doing a good performance. You have to set up quite a bit of stuff in order to get the reveal or payoff of the of the transition being like the core narrative thrust of the film. Okay, you got to set this stuff up there. I don't really like it, but whatever. Middle part, I'm like, okay, actually, I quite like this part. But then the ending, I'm like, nope, you didn't try at all. You took the easy way out on all of this, and that, and again, returning to the script being the weakest part of the film, that to me feels like just like abandoning all the interesting concepts that I thought could have been wrapped up in an interesting way. And I will wholeheartedly full stamp, boom, the ending sucks. And I can understand that being a big enough issue to completely ruin the film for people.
Yeah. Let's see here. I don't know if I have any other notes.
I don't know. I don't have much else.
We covered every topic in Emilia Perez.
And we're
first people to ever do it.
Yeah,
we're only a couple of minutes away from hitting the runtime of the movie.
Yeah, I have this question I just have this question. It's like when Rita is like, "Whoa, oh my God, they sent me Emilia's fingers," and like we have to go get her. It's like, are they that close, really? Like the scenes that we see that they have together in this second act
it's
of the
modern
film.
film.
Like,
it's modern filmmaking. Travel times don't matter. You can walk from Rivendell to the Mines of Moria in a scene cut.
No. Do you mean emotionally close or physically close?
I mean emotionally close.
I thought you were talking about physically.
Okay, that's the difference. A very key difference there. Thanks, English.
Yeah, one of the final scenes that they had together is this thing at the gala when like Emilia Perez is like weirdly rude to Rita, and Rita calls her a bitch or whatever.
Yeah,
and then we have the whole number, and then
at the
Rita's like
NGO. Rita seems to be unhappy with it because she feels like this is a bad ending for her career.
But it's after the only other scene that Epifania is in, when Epifania is like, "Hey, Emilia Perez is really nice," and Zoe Saldana is like, "Yeah, she is really nice." And like, well, where is this characterization coming from? These two people who have experience that we haven't seen them really interact with.
Well, I don't know. I actually do think that I believe in their dynamic, and maybe it's just me buying a little bit more emotionally into the situation that is there. But especially given how much how much time Rita spends with Emilia's family and the connection that she has gained with the children, and the amount of time she spent helping Emilia, and to me, as I get again buying into Emilia's redemption arc and being a good person and trying to atone, I empathize with Rita into obviously not wanting this person that she spent presumably like a year or more of her life with. The timeline's also a little unclear on that, like how long this middle section takes, how long it takes. But I believe that she cares a lot, and that they did have a lot of fun moments together, and that they sat there and shared stories, and they were the only people that they really knew in this place. And so they grew that connection, and especially on Emilia's side, Rita's the only person that like she can trust with like this whole history that she has. And so I believe in their bond, and especially by this last bit when Epifania shows up and they have that heart-to-heart moment where they've both grown very close to Emilia, and they both know about each other but haven't met to that point. I thought that the emotional stakes of that moment and the opening of their hearts to one another did very much work. And so I do believe that she, not that I believe that she would like grab a gun and ride out into the desert alongside a bunch of gun. I think that I don't know if I might, but like that they had a bond. I do.
By the end of the movie, I just feel like their relationship is a lot more fraught than the film kind of characterizes the end of the relationship.
It's kind of like they cut a lot from this second or from the final third of the film, end of the second act into the third act. Like that there was more to this ending, and there was more between the characters towards the end of the second act. But we're never gonna know, I guess.
Well, when we get the ODR cut.
Oh, finally.
Netflix did those with Rebel Moon.
It's true. We're gonna get two Emilia Perez part 1 and 2. Emilia Perez, the Chalice of Blood, and the
Scargiver.
Scargiver?
Because the director's cuts have two different subtitles.
Oh, I have no idea.
Chalice of Blood? I don't know. Hang on, this is important. Let's just stop and be quiet for a couple minutes as I Google this.
No.
That's about all I have, I think.
Yeah,
I think we kind of hit everything.
Any final thoughts? I think I've come around. I've been tossing numbers here and there like a tennis match during this review of what I'm going to score it, and I finally found what it is, so I'm curious.
Ooh, nice. Congratulations.
I had to dig. I had to dig.
Uh-huh.
Okay. We're gonna punch him
Are
in.
you doing a score?
Give it a score.
Wait, I didn't pull
Okay,
it up.
okay.
Tanner,
Well,
what is this movie gonna get nominated for?
Nominations.
Everything. Let's move on.
Well, yeah, it'll probably lead the morning, as we are now 12
Morning.
hours away at the time of recording from the nominations. Best Picture will be nominated for Best Picture. Hey, who fucking knows could even win? Who's to say? Best Director,
nuts.
Best Lead Actress for Carla Sofia Gascon, Best Supporting Actress for Zoe Saldana. Selena Gomez could also get nominated for Best Supporting Actress. We'll see. Let's see. Best
Original song.
Yeah, Best Adapted Screenplay will win Best International
That'd be
Feature.
awful.
Let's see. Best Editing, most likely. Maybe some other text. Best Sound. Could do like makeup and hairstyling. And we'll get 2 nominations for Best Original Song for El Mal, the one that we talked about, and then also Mi Camino, which is the Selena Gomez like karaoke song. You guys remember that one?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's a decency.
Okay,
Yeah.
before we find out, I do have an important question.
Okay.
Did Rita get a BBL in Bangkok?
Well, she did want one. This is known.
Well, wait, no, but I thought
no.
she was already thought she had too big of a butt. Remember,
Yeah.
there's that big part at the beginning. She's like, "Me and my fat ass."
Yeah.
This is the worst part of the movie because we can't be claiming that she has a fat ass. It's just not true.
It's just not true because we pan to people who do because they.
It's just not true.
Okay, let's.
Oh yeah,
score
because
it.
and then she's also
So on you, you're perfect in my heart.
she also
if
true.
you're watching
That's
this,
true. And she also in Bangkok she has the question. It's like how much for just the butt? $4,500. That's a steal.
It's a steal.
Let me tell you.
Okay, let's see how many.
Tanner, how many butts can you get?
Let's
With
Tanner, tell me your bank
with
account
my
number.
net worth.
Tanner's net worth in BBLs. What's
You liquidated all your assets.
if you liquidated
Guys?
your ass? How big would it be?
Oh man. Well, let's just say this: if I liquidated all my assets, I could get everyone on the panel right now with big old BBL. How about that?
Whoa.
Because you got
Okay.
great ass.
All right. Let's find out. Ready? Punch it in. 3, 2, 1, go.
Oh, okay. That's fine.
Back bug lantern.
Okay, we've got a score. It is 4.1. 4.1. That's not very high. That's going to put Emilia Perez at the bottom of
Ain't nothing gonna get lower than this. Let me tell you for the rest of this show.
Yeah, probably not.
4.1. I'm just going to tab over. 2024's did not even hit close. The lowest number in 2024 was 7.5. So
Yeah, it's almost like last year's nominations were way better than this year's,
there we go. The point breakdown
God, American
is
Fiction,
and
that's
the
a
year
good
before
movie.
that.
Abram gave it a 2, I gave it a 3.5, Tanner gave it a 4.7, and Tucker gave it a 6.3. And I'll have you know that my value went down half a point through this review. It started at a 4, but it climbed.
Another interesting thing, if you add Tanner's score, Timo's score, and my score together, you get Tucker's score.
Wow.
Whoa,
What
look
sort
at
of
you, quick math.
Mathematical anomaly. He could be lying too. I wouldn't be able to nail that one.
Tanner can't do addition to the point ones. That doesn't make sense to him.
Mm-mm. What do you mean?
Tanner,
What do
I
you
got
mean?
a question for you.
Tanner.
What do you mean? A number is smaller than 1? What are you talking about?
What are you talking about?
I had a question for you, Tanner.
Yes.
What movie are you watching next time?
Oh well, Abram, I'm so glad that you asked. This will be our first actual review after the nominations come out, so I think it's fitting that we choose the film.
Nickel Boys, directed by Ramel Ross.
So, are you guys excited to watch that one?
I'm very excited.
That one's going to be interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm certainly excited for it.
Yes.
A lot of themes and
I mean, the
I can't wait to discuss
performances,
his
the
nominations.
performances.
Oh, that was-
what can
those
be
were crazy.
said.
Mhm.
Lots of bees, lots of keeping of them.
no, I'm not doing that.
My God, when Craven becomes the hunter, geez, that was so good.
We will talk about
Oh,
the
a little dark horse, little dark horse possibility.
Next
Is that your Madam Web voice?
Yes, I mean, I just think it's cool that
Dakota Johnson.
that we finally get a
actress.
conservative film like Reagan into the race.
Like Horizon, the American Saga, Chapter 1.
Correct. Anyway.
Well,
Like Emilia Perez.
join us next time for discussing Nickel Boys. And you know what I always say? Write a comment if you have any thoughts about Emilia Perez. If we're wrong, if we're right, we'll look at it at least. until then, you know what I say? Stay cool, keep warm. Peace.